This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, and I am your host for this week's episode, Paul Jasley, and I am so excited to be here talking about comics. We have a virtual studio filled with heavy hitters, people I love to talk about comics with. I got my trusted co-host, Daniel Martinez.
Hello, everyone.
And friends of the show, we have, you've heard him here before, Dave Baker.
Hello, thank you for having me. Hey.
And Nicole Goux. Nicole, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. This is going to be such a fun episode. But before we get started, I just want to say, for listeners that maybe haven't heard you on the show before, Dave and Nicole, do you want to just give a brief introduction, who you are, why you're on the show, and what you're here to talk about?
My name's Dave Baker. I'm a comics writer and illustrator of many graphic novels. I make a lot of creator-owned comics, specifically with the artist Nicole Goux here. We co-create many sort of coming-of-age romance comics, I would say, is our milieu. Books like Forest Hills Bootleg Society, Fuck Off Squad, Everyone is Tulip, and our most recent effort, which is put out through Top Shelf and will be released April 7th, Pumpkinheads, which is a coming-of-age romance comic about kids who live in a punk flop house and play in a shitty punk band.
I'm Nicole. As Dave mentioned, we make a lot of books together, mostly slice of life, coming of age comics. I also did Shadow of Batgirl for DC with Sarah Kuhn and This Place Kills Me, which is a YA murder mystery with Mariko Tamaki that came out last year, and some other things. I write my own books. And yeah, we have Pumpkins coming out. It's exciting.
No, it's so exciting because we're big fans of all your work here on the show. We've read, if listeners who maybe aren't familiar, you just got a whole list of stuff to read there from both these creators. Fantastic books. I recommend everything they do. And we got a little sneak peek of Pumpkinheads, and here to tell you, it's great too. It's so great to see this new work, be able to talk about it on the show. But let's table that for now because we have important IRCB business we have to get taken care of. Otherwise, Mike will be very upset. We have legally mandated questions I have to ask. How have you been? How have comic books been? I'm going to start with you, Danny.
Paul, I've been doing very well. It's been a really fun week. On Monday, we had our pre-release for the Star Wars game that I played at the trading card game, so that was a lot of fun. You always love to see a new set. We had rotation happen, so that changes things forever. And the Star Wars will come back up in a second. But before I get there, yesterday, I want to give a shout out to one of my local comic shops, Zeus Comics here in Dallas. They had an event with some Ignition Press creators. So I got to talk to Leah Williams, Joe Eisma, and Jim McCann about their respective works with Ignition Press. Let me tell you, Ignition Press, it's a relatively new publisher, but they are doing some really, really fun stuff. I think they are allowing creators to just kind of push the boundaries of or just deliver different books. You know, they don't really have anything that I would say is like superhero fare, but all the other stuff, it's really fun, like mysteries and adventures, fantasy. You can really get into a lot of that. So if you haven't checked that out, I recommend you do. And then once again, shout out to Zeus because they do stuff like that. We haven't had a convention locally in a while because our big convention center is being renovated. So they pushed everything to the fall. And, sometimes you get the itch of I need to go somewhere. So luckily that'll hold me for a little while. Now, as far as comics, on top of all the thousands of other things that I'm reading on a weekly basis, I got a chance to take a look at a book called The Star Wars Hyperspace Stories Grievous from Dark Horse Comics that will be released as of the release date of this episode for everyone. This is written by Malcolm Ressi with art by Caio Felipe. The story takes place on the jungle of the planet Katu, where General Grievous has been sent by Count Dooku to conquer the world in the name of the Separatists. And for Grievous, this is not just another mission, it's a full-on campaign. It is also an opportunity to prove his worth to his Sith Master. So this one character that had 15 minutes of screen time in one of the movies somehow became my favorite. So anytime something pops up with General Grievous, I'm right there. I'm seated for it. So, and this book is great. I love that we get to meet some new Jedi. We meet Cardiff Bay, who arrives with a battalion of clone troopers to defend the planet. but instead of charging straight into battle, Grievous kind of takes like this to the jungle and uses kind of that as his cover. And what follows is just like a cat and mouse hunt through the wilderness. So I think Michael Moresi does such a good job with the character of Grievous, almost like he's a force of nature, operating entirely on a mission and his instinct. Every move just feels very calculated and deliberate. So if you're a fan of the character like myself, I think this book is really going to lean into that intensity. You know, Grievous is driven, he's ruthless, absolutely obsessed with like a lot of us collecting things. Now, in his case, it's lightsabers from Dead Jedi. So, and then the artwork by Kaya Felipe is fantastic all throughout the book. It's very fluid and it feels very cinematic in a way that I think really helps whenever it's a Star Wars book. Especially when it comes to like those big battles and the jungle sequences, right? These environments just become part of the storytelling. We see some new creatures, or at least creatures that are new to me in the Star Wars lore. So I would say the best thing about this book is that it introduces a lot of aspects to the lore, and it's definitely very connected to Star Wars. But it's just a standalone story that you can enjoy without like having to have read anything. Probably maybe at least have watched those 15 minutes of screen time for Grievous, and so you can see who the character is. But yeah, it's great for longtime fans, great for people that are just discovering a new chapter of the story. And I think that's what a lot of these Star Wars books should do. Just give me a piece that is not connected to any big lore. I just want cool stories with fantastic art. And this book truly delivers. So, and the best thing is that this is just one standalone trade paperback. So Dark Horse will do that every once in a while with these hyperspace stories, because I don't know what their deal is with Marvel and Star Wars, right? But they're also publishing Star Wars comics. I'm like, the more the better. I'm not going to complain about another Star Wars book on my pull list.
It's funny, Danny. As soon as you talk about this, I had to rack my brain to remember who General Grievous was, because I was like, he's not in the movies that much, is he? Which one is he? He's the robot, right? He's the robot.
Yeah.
Okay. How could you forget?
I'm sorry.
You're insulting legions of fans who are listening to the show right now.
Not the first time
memorable.
Star Wars, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have done the General Kenobi line. Then that would have
exactly. The whole time you were talking, I was like, "Am I about to do a General Kenobi?"
I see. No, I mean, I think that's the thing with Star Wars is like there's so much of it, but I guess if you're doing a book that is a standalone story, it's kind of more appealing. I don't, I mean,
but that's kind of like Danny was saying. That's kind of my favorite thing about both Star Wars and Star Trek. Is just like, give me a little weirdo story about Emrys. You know what I mean? Like let's do like a real strange little like Pondo Baba one shot. You know what I mean? Like I love the fact that these universes are so large and the characters are so iconic that even the D-list ones, even if you don't know their name, you're just like, oh yeah, that guy that was in the back of that one scene. You know?
Yeah.
As long as we kind of get to like live in the universe, yeah.
Yeah. No. I was going to say that you have infinite IP that way. There's infinite titles you can do with every character. So yeah,
I'm still waiting for a Star Wars sitcom. I don't know why they haven't done it. Like Skeleton Crew was very close to that, but not really. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe with this new leadership change, they'll finally get it done. Come on, you cowards! Give us a sitcom. Give us a rom-com in the Star Wars world.
For a while,
Lower Decks
they were
is
talking
kind of
about
closer in the Trek world,
and for a while they were talking about doing one with it was going to be like a space station sitcom, like a single location sitcom with Worf and Geordi. It was going to be like a
loved it.
Yeah, and I remember like them being like in casting talks and stuff, but like
wow.
I guess it just never came to fruition from the pandemic or something. I don't know.
Never say never. They could still do it.
Yeah.
That sounds exciting. Okay, Nicole, I'm going to throw it over to you. How have you been, and what comics have you been reading lately?
I'm doing okay. Probably about the same as most people right about now.
Fair.
But this week I got to read a couple of kind of mini comics that I've been meaning to sit down and look at for too long. My stack of books is too big. But the first one is called My Body Unspooling by Leo Fox. It's a Silver Sprocket book, and it's just kind of a maybe like 48-page. These are both probably about 48-page one-shot stories. And my Body Unspooling is this very kind of abstract, esoteric comic that I think anybody who has at any point felt uncomfortable in their meat sack would probably enjoy, because it's all about the kind of conflict between head and body, and wanting to separate yourself from your physical being and just exist as an entity of light and energy or whatever, and kind of the push and pull of that. And Leo has this really kind of very stylized, very fun way of drawing. God shows up at one point, and he's like a little mouse who sleeps in a little bed for no reason. He's just a mouse who sleeps in a bed. Or a rat, probably. Let's be more accurate. He's a rat who sleeps in a bed. And I just found it really beautiful. Leo has done a couple other books with Silver Sprocket that I've also been meaning to get to, and I think one in Ignatz for, I'm forgetting the name of, there's a big chunky one that I have yet to read. And I think it's on my other shelf. I wish I had brought those books over. But they're really gorgeous and really fun, and if you're looking for something different, I highly recommend that. And then the other one is a book by E.M. Carroll, who made Through the Woods, if anybody's familiar with that, called When I Arrived at the Castle. And it's a book that was originally published by Shortbox in the UK, and then is now being published through Silver Sprocket again. And it's this big kind of like, I think the original one was kind of maybe like 5 by 8-ish size. And now it's this oversized 48-page edition that's black and red and shiny and beautiful. And their stories are always this sort of, they feel like fairy tales, but they are not, reference to anything specifically that has existed in fairy tale history. But it's about a sort of cat woman, I guess, showing up at a castle to meet this woman who is maybe more than she seems. And she goes on this, I don't even really know how to describe it without giving stuff away, and I don't want to spoil anything, but EM's layouts are just so incredible. There's all these really beautiful, deep spaces of the castle that are just kind of like black, empty spaces with doors or, furniture sort of scattered around, and they feel all very metaphorical as opposed to very literal. And the way that EM leads your eye across the page is absolutely brilliant. And the vibes are creepy and a little spicy and just very, very fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website, the Silver Sprocket website, which I want to remind our listeners, like, if you want to read some of that stuff, they have really cool memberships where you can get everything digitally for like $15 a month, which is insane. Like, that's insane, because that's like 3 regular books or like 1 variant cover. Yeah. So like you can get so much. And especially that first book, My Body Unspooling, the art is so gnarly in this. Oh my God, there's like teeth everywhere. I kind of hate it and I love it at the same time. And
it is like actively repulsive, but also beautiful at the same time. There's lots of like innards and like gloopy bits that are just like weird body organs, and that makes it sound really horrible, but it's actually quite beautiful to look at.
Sure. Well, I know Mike is very happy that someone's singing this praises of Silver Sprocket on this episode. So yeah, like, again, we like everything they do. I got to get on that membership to check this stuff out. It looks pretty amazing. So thanks for the reminder.
I mean, we're Silver Sprocket artists, so it shouldn't be shocking that I'm like, hey, guess what? I like Silver Sprocket stuff.
Exactly. It's always great. Dave, how about you? How have you been?
Same as Nicole, as good as you can be considering the imminent march of World War III dawning. But as far as comics go, I recently read a book called The Song About Green by the Taiwanese artist Gao Yan. It's a coming-of-age romance comic about a girl in Taiwan who falls in love with a boy who lives in Japan, and they kind of communicate through music and are in a long-distance relationship. And the comic was, I found it in Japan, translated into Japanese, but it was originally published in Taiwan in their publishing industry. I know next to nothing about Taiwanese comics, so this was very cool to me because I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I didn't know that there was a big market. I mean, I knew that like manhwa and manha, it's called manha. I know that stuff exists, but like I personally just don't have a lot of exposure to it. And honestly, it was the art that drew me in first, because she has this amazing style. Where this is one of her other books, Tsukima, that I'm going to hold up. And she's got this very kind of like pared down, like photorealistic style where she's obviously like drawing from photographs. And like this book, Tsukima, which is her other series, this book has like 4 or 5 volumes. And then the other one has 2. Song About Green has 2 volumes. But this one has like, this one's like about a death in a family and how it affects all of the members of this extended familial unit. Just, uplifting work. But honestly, that's kind of the stuff I like. And she has these amazing, like, giant crowd or building scenes where she's just like drawing, various cities in Taiwan. And it really, I find it a very transportive experience to read these books because it is so based in reality, where she's like taking photos and like really going to actual places. Like there's a scene in Song About Green where she's like arguing with the boy character, and the main character in both books it's just her. Like she's the model and she's just like tracing photos of herself. But she's like crying while they're walking across, there's this is it called Shibuya Crossing? The big, like, the X crossing in Japan that is in all the movies. I should know this. I went there like multiple times without realizing that that's what it was. I was like, this looks very familiar to me. And my friend was like, yeah, you idiot. Like, this is like a world famous place. I was like, oh, gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, she's like, they've took photos of her crossing that street, and she's like tracing them, and in the story she's like having an emotional breakdown, so she's like crying, and like it's so funny because it is naturalistic, but it's also like her like doing like this with these giant tears drawn on her face, like having this emotional breakdown at Shibuya Crossing.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't mean to mock this person's artwork. I think it is genuinely beautiful, and I think the stories are deeply moving. So much so that I read them with my phone over the manga, like using Google Translate, being like, I know that that's not exactly what they're saying. I think she's saying this. Okay, next page. Okay. But yeah, her drawings are amazing, and it's currently not available here in America, but you can find it on the internet. And I followed her on Instagram, and she posts a lot of really cool artwork, and yeah, I enjoy her work.
Nice.
I was gonna ask about that, Dave, because when I was looking at the list and I was putting in some, we do links for some of the books. If you join our Patreon, you can get a full list of those notes. And I saw it's like, this is only available in French. Like, does Dave speak and read French? Like, and I guess you don't. That you're just using the Google app too.
Nicole and I lived in France for a while, like 2 years ago, and I bought so many French comics, and I did the exact same thing. It was life-changing, because I was just like, oh, you can just like, because the Google Translate app is so good now that you can look through the lens of your phone, and it'll like, bloop, 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 like change the letters on the page to be whatever language you speak. It's a little bit more complicated in Japanese, because obviously like katakana and whatnot is written vertically. So they change it, but they keep it vertical, and it's on a side. So you're like reading it, and then you're like tilting your head like this to read, and then going back. Like, so it's a little more difficult in is that Romanic, Germanic languages? Whatever the languages that uses the Roman alphabet. It's a little more difficult, but it's still worth it. And her work is It's very cool, and I think also would probably travel well and be applicable to Western readers, because it is not stylized in a way that is maybe how some Americans would demonstrably refer to anime as like exaggerated, or like they have large eyes or something, which is something I like. But if you're not already a part of the reading of this art form, it might be something you bump on. And her art style is very naturalistic and very photo reference based.
Yeah. It's looking at the preview, I was like, it reminds me of, it has a quality kind of like Junji Ito without any of the creep that he drops into his work.
Yeah,
right?
I could see that. Yeah, I could see that.
So.
Yeah, it's like very wholesome, but also romantic Junji Ito. Yeah. There's a lot of kind of like yearning, even in the stuff where it's not yearning. Like there's, like I said, Tsukima is about like a death in the family, but there's still all these like little panels of people like pouring cereal, and then like their hands like touching glasses, and like, you know, these little like small intimate inset moments, and then like people like looking out of windows and like pouting and being like, you know, which for me, that's great.
That's all we ever really want to make.
Yeah. If we ever started a comics publisher, it would just be called Pouting, the comics company.
I will.
Yeah.
Dave, if you haven't, because you mentioned Shibuya and you have been there, Jujutsu Kaisen, they have a whole arc called the Shibuya Incident, if you haven't gotten around to that. So when you mentioned it, like I have a little bit of like, it's a really heavy arc of the manga and the anime. So like I had an experience when you brought it up, but if you haven't checked that out, I think.
No, you know, I've never seen or read Jujutsu Kaisen. That's one of those things, like another shameful blind spot for me. Chainsaw Man. I know I would like Chainsaw Man. It's dumb. He's got a giant chainsaw coming out of his head, and he's got chainsaws for hands. Like I know I would like this. And I'm glad Mike's
not here. He would have been upset about that.
I know, but it's. I'm aware that it is a weakness. And I would like to remedy that. But you know, there's only so many hours in the day.
Alyssa Liu would be mad at you.
Yeah, she would.
She brought that plush through all of the Olympics.
Yeah, she did.
Well, we're talking about.
I mean, that's a big blind spot for me too. So yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get there together. Yeah.
Yeah, see, you guys are no better than me. You guys can't beat me up.
I can't judge anybody on that regard.
Well, Paul, we know it's not manga, but how have you been? What comic books have you been reading?
Well, I mean, if people want an update, because I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, I am working through the giant collection of A Drifting Life, that manga by Yoshiro Tatsumi. That's like 800 pages. I'm 300 pages in, so I'm getting my manga in, you know, slowly but surely. It's a new thing for me, and I'm really liking that book. But I wanted to specifically talk about Bleeding Hearts #1, which is one of the new Vertigo titles that just came out recently. Written by friend of the show Dennis Camp, art by Stipin Morian, colors by Matt Hollingsworth, and letters by Hassan Atsmane Elal. There you go. It's an all-star lineup. Look at that creator list. No, it's incredible. So I knew I was going to pick it up no matter what. I like to read everything Dennis writes. And I guess the sort of elevator pitch for this is a zombie story, but a zombie with a conscience. It's set about 10 years after humanity has finally fallen to the zombie apocalypse. Not many people left living at all. And it follows the main character zombie, whose name is Mouse Pokes Golf Ball Through Hole in Head, or Poke for short. And he's part of this collective of different zombies, along with his best friend Mush. And they are kind of exploring the skeletons of society, whatever's left. And what's really interesting is that it feels different from a typical zombie story, because the zombies are the main characters, and it's about this sort of loose-knit community that these zombies create together. Like they have a shared sort of sense of morals and beliefs, and there's friendships. It's a kind of an interesting sociological twist on the genre, which, I mean, maybe isn't a twist since all the George Romero movies are sociological sort of experiments, you know, but this feels like Dennis Camp's kind of taking that to the next level. It's like, okay, it's not about the humans who are left, it's about the zombies and what their society looks like. And then the story of this issue starts with Poke, the main character, finding a human heart, which we learn is the most prized organ for consumption by zombies. And it mysteriously starts beating again. And he kind of is stunned and curious about this. He hides it from his companions, and it kind of like starts making him look at the world differently. Like they find this abandoned suburb, and while his best friend is kind of looking for whatever remnants to feast on, so to speak, Poke is looking around, kind of thinking about the people that lived in the houses. What were their lives like? So suddenly he has this sort of philosophical approach to the world that obviously zombies really don't. So he starts looking at the world and people as something other than just food, right? So I think it's a pretty clever take. It's got that sort of social commentary you expect from particularly Dennis Camp, but also, like I said, the Romero genre of zombie movies. And then Morian, who also did the artwork on 20th Century Men with Dennis Camp. It's an amazing looking book. It is very gruesome, but it's cartoonish in a way. So it kind of takes away the sort of visceral physicality of some of the artwork by just the exaggerated movements and the exaggerated facial features of the zombies. And then Hollingsworth kind of gives everything this like washed out, gloomy, dark vibe to it. So it kind of fits the story perfectly. So I really like this first issue a lot. I pretty much like anything Dennis Camp writes. As a fan of both George Romero and him, it's right up my alley. I think issue 2 came out last week, so I'll have to get to the store and pick that up as soon as I can. I really enjoyed it.
And also, I just love the fact that like Vertigo is really taking risks and putting out cool, weird stuff. And like this book specifically doesn't necessarily, to me, feel like Vertigo of old. It feels like it could sort of fit in like the late period, but it feels like, hey, it's a statement piece of this and a bunch of the other books that they're doing going forward of like, yes, it's going to be Vertigo. Yes, it's going to have the classic Vertigo feel, but also we're going to experiment and try new weird things. And like this is really cool. And I'm so thrilled by the fact that, you know, DC and Vertigo are really swinging for the fences and hiring cool, you know, people to work on their titles.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little skeptical about Vertigo coming back, but when they announced those titles, you looked at the creators involved. It's like, oh, they're going to let them do what they want. Like it is, you know, sort of creator-owned, quote unquote, sort of like little imprint at that point.
Oh, totally. I mean, the fact that it's like all of the people that are, well, not all, but the majority of the people that are working on this current era of Vertigo have had successful collaborations or long runs like 20th Century Men or like Mariko and Rosemary or Kyle Strom, and I can't remember the artist on his book, but like same thing, right? Like they've worked together before, I think, right? Maybe, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, that was that's the initiative. I talked to Kyle Starks, and they're like, our whole thing was like they just want people that have worked together to just do something with Vertigo, like whatever they want, but they've already proven success, which is I think that was the main thing, the main driving thing. Like, so
that's cool.
I like Bleeding Hearts. I love the team. It runs into the same thing that happened to me when I was reading Chew, that it gets very gruesome, and for some reason the cartooniness about it actually puts me off. So I'm gonna have to try again when the collection is out. Because some parts get really gnarly. Like there's a lot of plant stuff and like fungi too with the zombies. I'm like, that's too much. I don't know. I don't know if I can take all this. But the premise is really fun though, so I definitely want to check it out again in the future.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because again, I think 20th Century Men feels like such a different aesthetic than this book. So I was very surprised to see Morian kind of do this and kind of make it, you know, there's a character that literally is just a pair of legs, and like the way that's animated and the way that legs have to like communicate to the other zombies in the group. It's like it's camp, no pun intended. Like it's camp and it's funny in this sort of gruesome world of, you know, the zombie apocalypse. Yeah.
It makes me think of a completely different vibe, but what's that movie called? Onward, where there's two kids who are they accidentally disappear half of their dad, and they have to like undisappear his top half. And it's just like a running legs. It's so funny.
Yeah.
That's very funny.
I thought you were going to mention Warm Bodies, which was the zombie movie where he falls in love with the girl. But yeah, that's also, I didn't even think of that with the legs. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, so that's what we've been reading. And of course, lots of great recommendations there. My to-read pile just always gets bigger every time we do this. But let's move forward and talk about comics that are coming out soon, something that maybe is coming out soon or has been sitting on the top of your read pile for too long. You're finally going to get to it. Nicole, I'm going to start with you. What are you going to be reading next?
Yeah, there's this fanographic book it is a tome. It is probably like at least 500 pages, if not more than that, called Sunday by, and I'm going to probably pronounce this wrong, it's Schrauwen? But the book has such a fascinating premise. There's a little like foreword in the beginning of it that kind of teaches you how to read the book, which is super interesting because the whole concept is that he was talking to his brother-in-law at some point who's a very normal person, has a very banal life by all accounts. And he decided to take on the challenge of making someone's very banal day into an interesting comic. And so he had his brother-in-law write down like every thought and every single thing he did for a like normal Sunday of his life, and then made a 500-page comic out of it. And to make that interesting is such a crazy challenge, but the book is beautiful. I've only read I read the beginning of it, and then it has been sitting on my pile for a little bit, but it's like, I don't know whether it's actually risograph or whether it's kind of like faux risograph, but it's got these beautiful neon colors. There's so many sort of interesting mechanics that he uses that where like some of it is when he's just thinking about a thing. Some of it is when he's experiencing a thing. Some of it is when he's actually having conversations with people. And the different ways that Schrauwen kind of illustrates that, I think, use the comics language really well, to the point where like he literally kind of teaches you how to read the book in the first couple pages. And it's like I said, I haven't gotten very far in it yet, but it is such an interesting concept that could ultimately be incredibly boring if you did it wrong. But I think it's going to be brilliant. I'm not sure yet.
Well, that's kind of exciting then, because you never know what to expect. So you can always be surprised by that. No, I'm looking at the artwork now and like, yeah, it's really stunning. Like it's really, I love that risograph sort of like simple color palette that they're using for this. It looks great. Yeah,
I mean, at the very least, it's like neon Pantones or something, because it is replicating that Rizzo feel very well. And the paper texture is really nice when you have the physical book. And it is literally like, it is huge and, you know, the size, not the size of my face, but it's a chunky book. But it's a quick read. It's not like, it doesn't drag because it's just like this kind of, you know, stream of consciousness almost.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks amazing. Of course, it's Fantagraphics. I'm pretty much everything they put out. Like, yeah, I'm going to check that out eventually. So add it to the list. Yeah. Dave, what about you? What are you going to be reading next?
I also have a Fantagraphics book that's been on my to-do list for way too long. It's called Raging Clouds by Yudori, which is actually a book that was published by Fanta in no small part because of Nicole.
Okay.
She recommended it to the editor after reading the French edition of this book. I'm a big fan of Yudori's comics. If anybody isn't aware, she's a South Korean artist who makes kind of multiple disciplinary works. She makes like longer graphic novel books, and then she also makes a bunch of really fun kind of just like Instagram comics about her life. And they all are they're very intense. You know, she has a very specific persona, and I really enjoy the way she draws and her writing voice. And this book is about a Korean girl that moves in and becomes like a housemaid in like a Dutch merchant's house. And it's like the relationship that she develops between the woman of the house and her. And it's kind of sort of homoerotically charged, but not fully actualized, and about like the systemic pressures of that day as a means of making meta commentary about how things work in modern society. I'm flying blind here. I don't know. I haven't read it, but this is my understanding of what it is, and it looks fantastic. Was that a good summary? Did I do okay?
Sort of. So it's basically a Dutch merchant goes to Korea for trading purposes, and he comes back with basically a Korean mistress / slave,
indentured servant.
She's not a slave, indentured. She's basically an indentured lady for him, for his purposes. But he is already married and has a very proper Dutch wife. And it takes place in the kind of like Tulip Wars era of Holland. And it is about this sort of relationships between these three people and the tension between these women and kind of the it's also about like beauty standards of the time, and it's just a really beautiful and kind of complex book that is so gorgeous. Yudori is an incredible illustrator, and like Dave said, that she does these kind of very modern slice of life mini comics, but she also does these very elaborate period pieces. Fanta is putting out another period piece book of hers coming up in this, I don't know when it actually comes out, this next season or whatever. But yeah, I had been a fan, we had both been fans of Yudori for a while, just online. And then when we were in France, the French edition was out, but there was no English translation. And we did this thing when we were there touring, is that every bookstore that we did a little signing in, they came to us after and were like, oh, we do this really special thing for the people who come to our stores to do signings, and you get to pick any book you want from the store. Pick whatever you want. And it was the best thing ever, but also by the end we had a stack of books in French that we had to ship home. But I was like, I want this book so bad, even though it's totally in French. And I read a little French, so I did like a combo of the Google Translate plus my French knowledge, which is very bad. So I have only read it in French, but it is just a really beautiful, beautiful book. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking at the preview art right here, and it's absolutely stunning. Yeah, it looks amazing.
And she's also one of those illustrators, I think, that is like, she does draw in like a manhwa manga style, but I feel like she's a little bit more applicable to people who are new to manga because it's not as big of a jump.
Yeah. And also I just feel like, she's very interested in these kind of, sweeping historical epics, which most, I feel like Western publishers are like, that's death. Like we cannot put that out. No one will buy it. But the way she draws recontextualizes it and makes it commercial, like the execution of it makes it something that I think you could give to anybody and they'd be like, oh, this is so cool. Like it's kind of the same thing with Shinichi Sakamoto. Like his work is so detailed and anal retentive in the way that he's just drawing lace and lace and lace and lace and lace and lace and lace, like, and the way that he crosshatches faces where like it doesn't matter that it's whatever 16th century France, somebody in a modern lens can read it and be like, whoa, like the effort on display and the way that that's depicted is something that's pulling me in and making me read the story. And then I learned that, I actually do like stuff from this time period. Like his Dracula is really good for that exact reason. But I mean, Dracula is also a commercial project, but he's done a couple. He did one about like, I haven't read it, but he did one about like the French Revolution, and that one is supposed to be really good as well. Like I said, so many hours. Yeah.
Exactly. Too many comics, too few hours. Yeah, that's the story here. Well, before we get any further, we do want to mention we have listeners in the Discord with us today, and they've got books that they want to read. So our friend Avocado Kenobi, Avo for short, is going to be reading Super Creep Show this week, top of their pile. They also mentioned the new Batwoman, which I totally forgot is coming out this week as well. Thanks for the reminder. So, Danny, what's on the top of your pile?
Well, Paul, I'm gonna surprise everyone, and especially Avocado Kenobi, since they didn't pick Batwoman because they thought I was gonna pick Batwoman, and that would have been a fair assumption, except for the fact that
Mhm.
in order for me to get reviews out, I've already read Batwoman, so it's
Ah.
obviously not on the top of my pile. Shout out to my friends over at DC. Uh, Instead, what I picked was GI Joe #20 from Image Skybound. And I'm like, oh man, let me follow up these two great Fantagraphic books with my G.I. Joe nonsense. But here we are. That's the beauty of the show. And
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like I should have gone last just looking at the list because I see Paul's pick as
Yeah.
well. But here we are. This is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Andrea Milana and covers by Lee Loridge. Optimus Prime finally is going to meet Duke for the first time ever. Like, we've all been waiting for this. If you've been reading the Energon universe and you started reading
Mhm.
these Transformers G.I. Joe books, like, what are we waiting for? Like, as Io Debris would put it, I'm seated and the employees at my local shop are scared to ask me to leave because it's not Wednesday yet. I can't wait for that meeting. It's been we're like almost 2 years deep into this stuff, and like I picked up a 10th printing of the second issue of Transformers the other day, so like
Mm.
people like these books, and I'm people, so I can't wait. I feel like Optimus and Duke are like the biggest dorks in each of their respective books. But it's so interesting because in this universe, compared to like their animated counterparts, they are a lot less polished. Like Duke was always like can do no wrong. Optimus, same thing. But in these books, they are full of flaws, and they keep doing stuff that just it feels like they're just not like the like the Captain America, all good guys. Like they are flawed individuals, or Transformers, whatever you want to call it. And especially because Duke doesn't trust the Transformers since a Starscream killed his friend in the first issue of Transformers. So like he hates Transformers. So I can't wait to see how this is gonna go. But yeah, this is just like some really really fun stuff that I can't wait to get to it. Very excited for that. But Paul, what are you reading next? That's what the people really want to know.
Well, Fantagraphics went 3 for 4 this episode because that's also what I picked. I picked Lost Marvels #1, Tower of Shadows. This is published by Fantagraphics, but it actually reprints some old Marvel titles from 1969. Marvel had a short-lived horror anthology series called Tower of Shadows that came out in the late 60s. So maybe if you know comics history, you know the Comics Code Authority put a pretty like strict rules about horror comics and any type of violence or supernatural stories. In the 50s, by the late 60s, they'd relax those rules, which allowed DC and Marvel to kind of start publishing horror comics again. DC had a couple different horror anthology titles, and this is Marvel's attempt at it, called Tower of Shadows. It's an EC Comics style horror anthology. It only ran about 9 issues, but Fantagraphics collected it to republish all 9 issues. And you look at the creators involved, it's got work from Neil Adams, Jim Steranko, Barry Windsor-Smith, John Buscema, Gene Colan, Wally Wood, John Romita, Mary Severin, Jerry Conway, Bernie Wrightson, and much more. You look at those lists of creators, and they're mainly known for doing superhero stuff, specifically like Neil Adams, Steranko, John Buscema, and John Romita. But the ability to see them doing horror comics and try to do something different is really exciting. I actually looked at the first few issues of this. The first story is a haunted house story done by Jim Steranko, and it is absolutely stunning. It is so well laid out. The story pacing panel to panel is incredible. The way he captures people's like shocked expressions up close, it's just a stunning look. And each issue has like 3 or 4 short stories. They're all hosted or introduced by the narrator, his character named the Digger, or who's basically just the grave digger, and he's telling you about the customers at his job. And like, here's how this one ended up here, and it's introduces the story. It's a classic riff on the EC anthology horror titles. So, like I said, I read the first couple issues. They're really fun, just to see these artists doing this type of work, something that's not superheroes, something that's a little bit different. And then Fantagraphics is so good at republishing this stuff because they really don't touch it up too much. They make it look nice, but they're not recoloring anything. It still looks like the way it was originally published. They have the bullpen essays in it from each original issue. There's a wonderful essay at the beginning of the book that introduces the collection and puts it in historical context. So I know they've done a couple other of these. This is the first one I've read. I just had to get my hands on this horror stuff. It's so much fun.
Congratulations, Paul. You just sold another copy.
Yes.
It's really quite the list.
Everything you said, you could have stopped pitching like 20 minutes ago, bro. Like as soon as you were like, it's Marie Severin and Steranko and all these people, I was like, yep, sign me up.
Bought. Yep. Yeah, early Bernie Wrightson. Of course, he's known for doing horror work, but this is very early in his career, And then Barry Windsor Smith, I always pictured him doing the Conan stuff. So something like this is, completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the reasons why I like those magazines that they published so much. Like I always, whenever we're at shows, I always go trolling for the magazine boxes specifically because, those, the Nightmare on Elm Street magazine, even like the Rampaging Hulk magazine, Vampirella, like all of that stuff from the 70s. There's all these like really cool people who are getting their first couple shots at doing stuff specifically on the magazine side because the magazine side would just sell more than the direct market. Right. So they knew that they could take some risks. Like, I was in a shop the other day and they had that Nightmare on Elm Street #1, the magazine one, and Rich Buckler penciled it all. And like, wow, I love that guy. And I had no idea. I mean, I've seen the cover, but that issue is kind of pricey. It's like a $100 issue on the secondary market now. Yeah, and I was like very smitten with it. Same thing with, there was a Tomb of Dracula magazine, not the Tomb of Dracula comic, but the magazine was just like an anthology of Dracula vampire stories. And Rich Buckler did all these like inset, like front cover and back cover illustrations where like you open the magazine and it's like 4 or 5 panels where it's just like a coffin opening and like a vampire coming out. And like, that's really cool. Like to me, that's worth the price of admission. I'm like, this is rad.
That's awesome. Yeah. I wonder if Fantagraphics can start publishing that stuff in collections again, because I know they did a couple other ones of the early Marvel stuff. So whatever reason, I'm kind of glad Marvel's kind of letting someone else do it and treat it with that respect it deserves,
Well, especially because Marvel's paper is terrible and they recolor everything by fucking interns and like they charge $70. Like, yeah, I completely agree. Like, give it to somebody who's actually going to value the work.
Yeah, it's a beautiful collection. So I'm very happy they're doing this stuff. So there we go. Fantagraphics. Hopefully checks in the mail. We just sold a bunch of comics for you.
Fanta wins this round.
Yeah, Fanta wins this round for sure. Yeah,
I need referral links.
Well, that's so exciting
for sure.
Again, a bunch of great recommendations for all the listeners out there. But we have something more important to talk about. Not that those weren't important things, but we got a comic on the horizon that everyone's going to be picking up the day it releases. And that's, of course, Pumpkinheads by Dave and Nicole. Do you want to give us the short elevator pitch? You mentioned it briefly, but maybe a little more in detail this time.
Yeah, sure. Pumpkinheads is a coming-of-age romance comic that follows a character named Hannah Lipsky, who's a recent art school dropout after going through a bad breakup. She kind of decides, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. She ends up reconnecting with a former high school will they, won't they flame. He says, just move into our shitty punk flop house, crash here till you get your shit together. She does that. They end up rekindling their romantic connection, and through a series of zany experiences, she ends up fronting the band that he is the bassist of, the titular Pumpkinheads. And so each issue of the book is basically like a day in the life or a single episode, a self-contained story of this kind of group of wayward creatives and DIY people trying to both, live and make it in Los Angeles, whatever that means, play music, and also just like survive and exist. And Nicole is the artist, and I did some typing.
Yeah, we got, thank you for sending over an advanced copy. So we got to actually take a look at it and read it. And, it's right in line with the other stuff you've done together. I really enjoyed it. And I think I just want to say right off the bat, I always have sometimes trouble with music being portrayed in comics. A lot of times when someone draws a band, it looks like people just holding guitars on stage. But Nicole, you really capture the sort of passion of performance in those pages. I'm just kind of curious, are there any artist, either music or comics, that you're looking at for that type of artistic inspiration for those scenes?
There's not anyone specifically, except that in fact, there's an actual reference to, I kept coming back to that Love and Rockets cover. I don't know what issue it is, but there is
I think it's
one.
22. Yeah.
22. There is one splash page that it's a direct reference to that, because it's such a kind of immersive image, and the way that that one's Jaime, yes. He uses, the blacks and the posing of the figures. It feels so real and so lived in. And so, when I was doing them, particularly because they're a punk band, I think I would probably approach this in a similar way with another band, but like, it is so much about the kind of like action and the screaming and the passion. And so like, they have to be a really active band. And I think that helps make it feel more, experiential, I guess, because you can feel the movement of them on stage, which helps you feel the movement of the music.
Yeah, thank you for referencing Jaime, because that's the exact way my brain went. Because for me, that's the gold standard of how to draw a band looking cool on stage, is those Love and Rockets issues. And again, you're doing the punk aesthetic, and it feels like a very similar approach to that. So yeah, I saw that right away.
Yeah, this is obviously going out as an audio medium, but if you could see Paul when Nicole mentioned Love and Rockets, like he just popped for a little, like, and I knew that was gonna happen, so it was a great moment. So check us out on Patreon if you want to see that on the full video. But I want to ask, because once again, I also really enjoy this book. I sometimes when I'm reading stuff like this and I see that, like people's problems and interpersonal relationships that are not going well, and there's conflict, especially for like people that are living all together, it makes me uncomfortable. But it's kind of like a good type, like I'm just kind of vicariously leaving a lot of my frustrations or tension or those awkward moments through reading the book. So I wanted to ask, how do you guys approach like a story like this, where you have to balance all those elements and then you have to bring it to life with art? And like, how do you guys kind of put all that together?
Well, we did a lot of drafts of the script, and that stuff kind of waxed and waned in the various drafts, because Nicole is the one who kind of came up with the idea for the book. The previous couple books were my ideas, but this one, Nicole was like, we're going to make a book. It's going to be called Pumpkin Heads. They're going to play in a fucking band. They're going to wear pumpkin masks. And I was like, yep, that's a book. 100%. That is a book. Let us make that book. And then we spent like 5 years trying to convince anybody to bet on our weird punk, romance book. But the kind of like constellation of conflict in the book shifted and kind of varied considerably over the various drafts. I mean, at one point there was a whole other character who was like a manager of the band who was in the house with them. And we just ultimately ended up taking that character and giving their work to, their narrative real estate to other characters, because we just didn't have enough for them to do. And, I feel like in general, there's stuff that Nicole cares about, and then there's stuff that I care about, and then there's the Venn diagram of the stuff in the middle, and the balancing to try and make sure that that's a third, and a third. That's the process of writing. I think for our books as joint like collaborators, it's trying to figure out like, oh, this feels too much. Dave, you got too much. We got to put stuff in the middle bucket or in the Nicole bucket, so on and so forth.
I mean, I think it's less that like do we have different things that we're interested in? Yes. But when we come together on a book, we're usually fairly in line with what we think it needs to be and what we're interested in. The kind of point of tension for me is always like, because I care about character development and I don't often care that much about plot. But in order to, have a reason to be there and to give a satisfying story to a reader, you do have to have some plot. And so because there is only so much narrative real estate on a comics page, it really can be hard to do both. And so figuring out how we can get enough of the like gritty tension and character development that I care about with enough plot to actually keep the story moving and have conflict and tension. I think that's really where the kind of like tension happens.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And I think there's also like, you're always fighting space. Like we're always like God, there's just not enough room to do this thing that we want to do. Even when it's a 200 and some odd page book, it's still like the confines of the medium balloon to whatever the space is that you're given. If you're given 2 issues, you're going to figure out how to get into the 2 issues. And if you're given 10, you're going to figure out how to get it into 10, but you're going to want to do 12. You know what I mean? And like,
right.
You know, I mean, I've experienced, like, we're doing a couple of short stories right now for some various things that haven't been announced, and it's the same math where you're just like, man, there's just not enough room. And then you finish it and you're like, no, that was enough room. That was fine. I figured that out. It's just that it's the emotional, you know, how do I pare away as much as possible to get to the root idea of what it is?
Yeah, I can see that being tough, because this book and these other books you've done together, like the characters feel so rich and the world feels lived in, even though it's, you know, we're coming to it as a reader first. You know, as soon as I saw the collection of people sitting around the flop house, like, yeah, I know those people. You know what I mean? Whether they're people I recognize from real life or just the way they interact, like there's a richness to it. And I feel like you must give so much depth and background to those characters. How do you present that succinctly, you know, to fit into the confines of the comic, you know? I
mean, one of the ways we figured out how to do that is by looking at old school romance comics, right? Like,
okay,
because you know, those old romance comics, like, they're telling a full ass story in 8 pages. And at one point I was like, oh, maybe we do that. Maybe each chapter is 8 pages and we do like 50 fucking chapters. And then I was like, this is too hard. I don't want to do this. But we did take the stylistic thing of like every opening page to a chapter is that Silver Age kind of like tableau where it's almost like a cover that is like a trailer for the story you're about to read. And then the second page is always the same, where it's a 6-panel grid that says that was then, this is now. And in each of those panels, that was then panels, it's all flashback stuff. And then this is now, it's like the moments right before the story is about to start. And that helped us really kind of not only solidify the characters, but just kind of solidify the time span that we're spending, you know, and like giving background on characters that's not just like a guy sitting around being like, and then 10 years ago we did this. And those are some of the like more formalist aspects of the book that I'm like the most proud of. I think they came together really well. And also because Nicole draws a hell of a like weird Silver Age, you know, trailer moment. So it's one thing for me to be like, and then they're like kissing behind a tree and there's like text that says this. And it's another thing for her to like knock it out of the park and make it something that's really like, oh, I would read that comic. And then you do.
Well, and I really loved the idea. So at the time when we were developing this, we were looking at romance comics, but also we were reading the kind of beginning of Fantastic Four stuff. And each one of those like half splashes or splashes of the like intro page, I was so fascinated to see that so much of the time, the moment that happens on that front page actually isn't in the issue at all. And so it's more of like, this is the vibe of what you're getting. And that was so fascinating to me to be like, you know, most of the time, I mean, obviously comics covers sometimes are a little bit more esoteric of like a thing, but the images on those early Stan and Jack Fantastic Fours, they feel like they should be a moment that's actually in the story. And then often they are not. So that was kind of something we wanted to play with too, of like, this is the idea of this issue, not necessarily the things that are going to literally happen in the issue.
Right.
Issue, chapter.
You're speaking my language. I don't know. I mentioned on the show, if you listened last year, I read all of the Stan and Jack Fantastic Four issues leading up to the new movie. So that's like 106 issues. Like there is a rhythm to those issues where you get that, like, here's a splash page, here's where we get to it. And like, I don't know if Jack was too concerned about the plot making sense or there being like continuity between the issue to issue.
Yeah.
But that kind of what makes it great, you know? And it's like, I love the idea that one of my favorite things is the 70s Kirby where he does the splash page open up into a double page spread. It's almost like you're doing the inverse. We get the splash page right into a 6-panel grid to like, instead of like, not the story gets smaller, but you go into more granular versus like the 1-2 punch of the old Jack stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that reference, and now I'm going to look for it when I go back to reread this.
Yeah, I was gonna say I appreciate too you guys have provided like natural stopping points in because the majority of the books I read are 22 to 32 pages. Like when going into a book like this, having natural points that I can just stop, take a break, like whatever I need to do, and then kind of keep going. It gives me that I have that choice of like, are we going to keep going through this, go to the next chapter, or are we going to take a break here, and then just kind of enjoy what I just read? So it's both, and then it's also like there's some pretty funny stuff. Like you guys are very funny. The book is really funny, which is something that I also appreciate. I think it's difficult to make someone laugh just like on a written or like a visual thing like this without some of the other stuff that, noises are a big part of comedy, I think, at least in my book. So like just having the characters be so funny like that, all those little things, they just add up to a better reading experience as you kind of get through a book like this, which is what I appreciate of me stepping out of like the normal floppy stuff that I'm reading week to week, right? So
I mean, that really, it almost comes from, we were, talking about both in the comics industry and also in TV, this idea that like everything has become so serialized, and that like single issues, even when they are coming out every week, so many of them now are written for trade. So you're not getting a whole story in each of those issues. And despite us putting this out as a whole book, we wanted to kind of, this comes from also Star Trek, where it's like the old Star Trek was, 24 episode seasons that over a long span of time create a big arc for your characters, but you get to have these kind of succinct little stories and build background characters as you're doing it. And the new stuff is like, we have 8 episodes and we're telling one story. And, it just, not that there isn't value in that. There's some really beautiful, very serialized stories that have happened both in comics and in TV. But I think we lose something when we don't have the time to really spend with the characters and the B plots and all of that stuff. And so we really wanted to actively make the decision to make each of these chapters its own little story that you could read on its own as if it were a single issue and have a satisfying ending to it. And so that was a very purposeful choice.
And I think also because we had been having a lot of conversations about, like, I love a lot of the new Star Trek stuff, the new Kurtzman era stuff. And then there's also some stuff that I think isn't quite as successful because it's very difficult to make you care about D and C list characters when you're not having spotlight episodes on them, or you're not, giving them their own little moments to shine, because obviously for the entirety of the Berman era of Star Trek, they were very focused on the bridge crew, and like nobody else in the show got anything to do. And so when it comes time to do new stuff, they're like, hey, we're going to mix up the formula. We're going to do like the engineer is going to be a main character. The doctor is going to be a main character. And there's going to be all these ancillary people who are going to be the primary cast. And then the bridge crew, they're going to be around, and we'll probably develop them over the course of the show, but like, that's not going to be our priority. And I think the undergirding narrative support structure of those shows, the original Berman ones, is that like you care about everybody on the bridge because you've seen them in their real life doing stuff. And so when someone says, oh my God, there's Klingons off the starboard bow, you're like, oh my God, is Data gonna be okay? And like, you need those, one and done, we're taking a character, putting them through a dramatic arc, single standalone episodes, to be able to develop an attachment with those archetypes, or the how they fit into the greater whole. And like, that's one of the things we were really cognizant of when we were trying to build the book, is like, yes, Hannah is the main character, but also there's like a bunch of people who live in the house, and there's supporting characters. And like, one of the things we really wanted to do was like, here in Los Angeles, there used to be this really great comic book store called Meltdown Comics, and they had a stand-up comedy venue in the back, and they had a podcast studio, and they had all of this really cool social nightlife stuff that would happen there. And it was such a hub where the entire scene of the LA DIY comics community and professional community met together. And everybody was around, and even if you weren't friends with everybody, you knew this guy and that guy, and this person, that woman's doing this guy's doing that, whatever. And since that venue has closed, Meltdown went under a couple of years ago, that energy has just completely dissipated, and the scene in LA is just so much poorer because of it. And that was kind of like in my hometown, there was a punk venue and it went under, and the same thing happened. There was this little collective of people making stuff and experiencing life and making art together. The venue went away, and so did all of that connection. And that was one of the things that we were trying to replicate with this book of these people are in the good old days, but they don't know that yet. They're struggling. They're really trying to find a way forward, but they don't realize that in 5 years, when two of them are married or whatever, and they'll no longer all share this shitty apartment together. They're going to look back on this time and be like, yeah, that was kind of crazy. I probably should have slept with so-and-so, but man, that was a good time. We really bonded together, and we had a community. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to structure it in these single issue stories, kind of, is because we wanted to have as many bites at the apple of making the feeling of being a part of a scene and being a part of this community as possible. Because that's such a big part of being, a DIY creator or any artist,
Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel the book does capture that vibe perfectly. I mean, I like I said, I recognize those characters from my own past. I recognize that dynamic, and you capture it so well. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Danny, any final questions here? I know we're running long on the episode, so I want to, not that we don't want to stop talking, but yeah.
I have a few, but I think I'm going to put this one in.
Yeah.
It'll make a lot of sense when people actually read the book. And I feel like I got to ask. Do you guys have a favorite pie?
Oh, dude, that's a good question. That's a good question.
I wish my favorite pie was a weirder pie, so it would make sense for the book. But I do love a Dutch apple pie. The little crumblies on top.
Nice.
Is it abhorrent if I say pizza? That's not a pizza
pie.
I can't say that, right?
Totally pie. Yeah.
Pizza pie.
Pizza
All
pie.
right, I'm going to go pizza. I know it's a cop-out answer. But I don't really like pie.
You're not a pie guy. Yeah.
I'm not a pie guy. No. I see, this is the danger when people ask me things about various characters or things in our books. Some of the things are 100% based on me or 100% based on Nicole. And some of them, they're lies. I don't like pie. But, that's what being a writer is. Pies, delicious pies.
Yeah,
like
neither
that.
of us
It
are
keeps
very
your
good
fingers
cooks, so.
Perfect. Well, I agree. Pizza is definitely the best pie. So I agree with you, Dave. That's my pick too.
Thank you.
It's not so much a question. I just have to say, I really loved it. The day trip they take to Hollywood Forever, because whenever I go to LA, that's one of my first stops. And again, you capture the vibe. Because I remember going there for the first time and seeing the peacocks. I was like, "There's peacocks here!" So that little moment stood out to me. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, that issue is based on. We went there for my birthday one year, and because I had just recently discovered, this is like a weird thing I do every year where whenever it's my birthday, I'm like, let's go to a graveyard. Let's go to a cemetery. Let's check it out. Let's see. Yeah. And I'm such a tortured artist, you guys. I'm so deep. I'm just so, brooding, all black.
All the time.
It's amazing being me. But I had recently found out that Joe Shuster was buried at Hollywood Forever. And I was like,
yeah,
what? Joe Shuster? How do I not know this? So we went there for my birthday one year, and just like in the book, he's not actually in the cemetery. He's in what's called the Columbarium, which is this weird building off to the side where it's an entire building of urns where they have these little boxes that people can rent out or buy for their loved ones. And that room, I just found that room so moving because near Joe Shuster, like him and his wife are on like the right wall. And, in our book, there's a character that's basically Joe Shuster. And one of our characters, Morgan, really likes a character called the Lurker, who's been in every book that we've ever made. And the Lurker is basically the Phantom, kind of. It's like the Phantom or the Shadow or whatever. But, over the course of making as much work as we've made together, there's this weird kind of background lore of like the guy who originally created the Lurker, who was like the only famous person from this shitty small town that our book Forest Hills Bootleg Society takes place in. And the like second artist on the book that took over and like co-created it basically, is a character that is modeled on Joe Shuster and is quote unquote buried at Hollywood forever. And you know, the scene, it's a little bit more dramatic than what happened. It was mostly just Nicole and I wandering around being like, wow, this is crazy. And in fact, in that scene where they go to the columbarium, there used to be a little like prologue to the scene where it was based off of an interaction that we had with a groundskeeper, because you can't just go in there. You have to like get a groundskeeper. The groundskeeper has to unlock the door, walk you in, and then you can go up into the columbarium. And I kind of don't even remember what the interaction was now, but we had this weird interaction where he was like asking us like, what do you guys do? And we said comic book artists or something. And then like he had like a strange reaction. And that was originally the beginning of that scene, was Morgan being like, I'm in a punk band and I read comics, and the guy not understanding what comics was. But yeah, I obviously Joe Shuster is a legend, and the medium would have been exponentially poorer without his contributions, both Superman and Funny Man. We love Funny Man, the failed first Jewish superhero. Funny Man.
That's fascinating. I didn't expect that deep of a story just for a little one-off trip to Hollywood forever. I think the last time I was there, I was trying to find Joe Shuster, and I think as I ran to think like I don't think I can get to it. It's not as accessible as like everything else.
Yeah, you have to go talk to a person and ask them to let you in. And when we were doing that, it was so sad. I felt so bad. But when we were trying to get somebody's attention, it was a funeral. Like there was in the building right next to the columbarium, like somebody was having a wake and a ceremony, and we had to go up to like, I don't know the name of the role, but like the general manager or whatever of Hollywood Forever, and be like, excuse me, can you? And they were like, are you a part of this wake? And we were like, no, we're trying. And they were like, you need to go away. These people are mourning. And I'm like, yeah, I get, but we're trying to see the comic book artist that's in the columbarium. Can you please let us in? And they were like, they de-escalated very quickly. I don't know what they thought we were doing, but I think they thought we were being little shitheads or something. I don't know.
I see Joe Shuster. Pay your respects.
I'm just trying to see Joe Shuster. Honestly, the thing that was so sad, which didn't make it into the book, or at least I don't think it made it into the book, right next to Joe Shuster, there's like a 13-year-old boy that passed away, and his little, columbarium cubby hole, it was like a copy of Halo and an Xbox controller. And man, it's just... It's
thing that's so interesting about the columbarium is that like there are kind of like these glass boxes with usually an urn and a bunch of memorabilia. They're these little shrines to the person, and some of them are a photo of the person and an urn, and some of them are like poetry that they wrote, or the things they loved, or their Purple Heart, or whatever it is, and in a way that you don't get from just walking to someone's grave and seeing a headstone. You get a little window into these people's lives. And the space itself is beautiful. It's this like circular building with a big dome on it. And there's these kind of like winding staircases that go up, and there's this big fountain in the middle of the bottom floor. And it's a really beautiful space. So if you like those things, I would recommend going, even if there's not like someone in the columbarium that you're trying to see, or you can just go see Joe Shuster. But it's a really interesting experience to just see like what items their family members thought were important to them, or little bits of their stories. There was one guy who wrote these like really depressing poems that his family put in there, and we were like, whoa, this is intense.
And there was one guy in there who was an actor. I can't remember what show he was on. It was like Happy Days, or a show that we would all know. And like he had a second act as a baseball scout, where like he was this kind of D-list actor, comedian, whatever, and then reinvented himself as a baseball scout. And there was like a novelty baseball card that I feel like it was maybe the Pittsburgh Pirates or something. Some major league team made a card of him because they had such a good relationship with him, or maybe he worked for them or something. And like, I don't know, you just learn so much about people in these weird fragments and shards of their past existence. It's fascinating to me.
I remember that, and because that's David Lander who played Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley.
Yes,
and I was so excited to find that at Howard Forever because he had a bit part in Twin Peaks. Like, oh my god! Because I went to see the David Lynch, Tombstone. I'm like, oh, now I get a little tiny, minor Twin Peaks character pop up again in David Lander. So yeah, great stuff.
Had you been previous to the time that you went there last, or?
I've been there twice. I went there maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. To see the Ramones, to see Johnny and Dee Dee are there. And then this past time was specifically to see David Lynch and Paul Rubens. So, yeah.
Man, David Lynch, rest in peace. Am I right? Did you see Kurt or Burt Reynolds' cowboy hat statue when you were here this last time?
Mm-hmm.
Of course. Yeah. Me and my friend had a little picnic right across the little like pond. And we looked up and there's Burt Reynolds. So this is your listeners. Kids. This is your, yeah. This is your invitation to Hollywood Forever. If you're ever in LA, you gotta go.
And for those playing Paul Bingo, we got Love and Rockets, we got Twin Peaks, and we got Four. Superman via Joe Shuster talk. So like,
yeah,
that's a trifecta right there for Paul.
I really didn't expect to end up talking about David Lander and Hollywood Forever. But that's what we get when we have Dave and Nicole on the show. We never know where the tangents will lead us. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of fascinating because I feel like we worked on this book for so long. And I don't want to say that it's our most personal book, but there's parts of it that I think are. And there's parts of it that, like, because we worked on it for so long, because it was mined from, like, the idea of a DIY scene, and that gives you multiple bites at the apple, to use that phrase again, of like different characters that represent different periods in your life or different archetypes of what it means to be in a scene. Like, there's all kinds of, like, every one of the chapters that has this kind of, there's all these weird stories behind all of the chapters, which I don't know. I'm sure there is with our other books too. But I don't know if it's the density, because most of our other books are like Everyone is Tulip. It's about a young girl who moves to Los Angeles to try and become an actor. And like, we follow her sequentially as she tries to rise through the ranks to do that. And so there's not as many opportunities to be like, oh, and then this time is based on this thing that I experienced, or this time is based on something that my friends happened at a party or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a pretty solid representation of a specific time in the life of somebody who tries to make things. Yeah,
no, it's a great book. Any remind us again when it's coming out, where the listeners can find it.
Yeah, it's coming out in bookstores everywhere April 7th, and in direct market comic book stores April 8th.
Perfect. And Nicole, anything else you want to pitch where listeners can find you, or any other books you want to recommend of yours?
Of mine? Well, I do have on April 7th, I believe, a one shot, an issue of the Twilight Zone from IDW that I've written and drawn, coming out same day as Pumpkins. It is kind of a story about a very depressed woman who, as a kind of way to get herself back to normal, starts to order these kind of those health food boxes, like what is the, Purple Carrot or one of those, where you get the box and then you make your food and whatever. And she's promised no chopping. Everything's supposed to be all cut up. And when she opens the box, there is a root inside that is unchopped. There's a whole root. And so she decides, I'm not going to use this one. I'm just going to leave it. And it very quickly grows into something more than that and becomes a sort of entity that affects her life and kind of changes her outlook on life. And I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil it. Twilight Zone is all about the twist, right? But I wrote and drew it, and I was very excited to get to work with IDW on that. And they trusted me with a story. I sent them a bunch of stories or pitches, and they picked the one that I was the most excited about. So very, very happy with that. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. Dave, anything you want to else mention or where listeners can find you?
My website is heydavebaker.com. When I'm not making books with Nicole, I'm usually making a book called Halloween Boy. Oni Press is putting out a collection of Halloween Boy May 27th, 2026. This is 26.
Love to
right?
hear that.
Yeah.
yeah. Believe it or not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know anymore, man. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be the first 5 issues, the first arc, last of the Halloween Boys. And I'm very excited about it. So if you're into things like Hellboy, Indiana Jones, Doc Savage, The Phantom, maybe you'll like Halloween Boy.
I like Halloween Boy, and I think everyone else will.
Just a spooky little guy.
Yeah, just a spooky little guy.
Oh, I just want to say my website is just NicoleGoux.com, and you can find me on Instagram at @ngou, and Blue Sky is Nicole.Goux. Awesome.
Cool.
Great.
We'll put that in the notes for sure.
For sure. So yeah, you'll have to come back when those new books drop. We'd love to have you back on the show. I feel like we just scratched the surface. It's always great to talk to you because I feel like, again, the conversation goes places we never expect. So it's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
I want to thank Danny for being a trusty co-host. As always, thank you to Brian for proof listening. Thank you to Zander for editing the show. Again, thank you, Dave. And thank you, Nicole. Thank you, listeners. And until next time, comics are good. And so are you.